Imagine you're about to drop a significant portion of your savings on a single gamble.
Oh, stressful.
Yeah, like a totally split-second outcome. You definitely wouldn't trust a rumor you heard in the hallway, right?
Right. Absolutely not.
You wouldn't rely on, a friend of a friend's vague feeling about it. You would want the absolute, unvarnished truth, verified right at the source.
You need a guarantee,
Yeah.
or as close to one as you can get.
Exactly. And today, we're looking at this massive stack of historical articles and etymological research you sent us for this deep dive. Our mission today is to explore a phrase you probably use every single day to demand that exact kind of truth.
Yes, we are unpacking what it really means to get information straight from the horse's mouth.
It's funny because it's one of those idioms that is just so heavily embedded in the English language.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
We deploy it without any conscious thought at all. I mean, you hear a rumor about a company merger or even just some wild office gossip, and you want to bypass the chatter.
Yeah, you say you need to hear it straight from the horse's mouth. So looking through your research notes here, the modern definition is pretty straightforward. When you or I use this phrase today, we are declaring that our information came directly from the original source.
There is no middleman involved.
Right. There is no game of telephone where the message gets all garbled. It is like the absolute gold standard of reliability.
And the assumption there is that by going directly to the source, you strip away any potential for distortion.
Like manipulation or personal bias.
Exactly. The kind of stuff that naturally gets added as a story travels from person to person.
But the research you sent over points to this massive misconception. The story we've all been told about where this phrase actually comes from, like the historical anchor we usually attach it to, is almost certainly completely false.
It really is. It's a brilliant example of how a fake origin story can survive for generations simply because it sounds incredibly plausible.
Right.
But to understand why this false theory is so believable, we actually have to spend some time in the 19th century horse world.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, long before the phrase ever hit a printed page.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because when I was reading through the source material you provided, my first thought was that this had to be rooted in anatomy, right? Like physical inspection.
Which is exactly what most people think.
Right. And sure enough, the most common theory points straight to veterinary science. So walk us through the stakes of dealing in horses back then, because a horse wasn't just a pet in those days.
Oh, not at all.
Yeah.
I mean, in the 19th century, a horse was literally the primary engine of the economy.
They were everything.
Yeah, whether you were talking about agriculture, military cavalry transport, or the massively lucrative world of racing, a horse was a huge capital investment.
Right.
And in that market, age was the ultimate determining factor of a horse's overall value.
Because younger horses obviously have more working years ahead of them.
Exactly.
More stamina, a longer window for breeding, all that stuff.
It's exactly that combination of factors.
Right.
But here's the problem. Horses obviously do not come with birth certificates.
Right, right.
And physical appearance can be highly, highly deceiving.
How so?
Well, a poorly fed young horse might look completely decrepit, while a really well-rested, well-fed older horse might look deceptively spry. You needed an objective metric.
Which brings us to the teeth.
The teeth, yes.
The sources detail how checking a horse's mouth was essentially the definitive way to appraise its value. But how does that actually work mechanically? Like, why teeth?
It comes down to biology and really predictable wear and tear.
Yeah.
A horse's teeth grow and change shape in a very specific chronological sequence.
Okay.
For example, a horse gets all of its permanent adult teeth by about age 5. After that, the experts look at the biting surface of the incisors.
The front teeth.
Right. Young horses have these deep indentations in their teeth called cups.
Cups, got it.
Yeah. As the horse ages and grinds its food over the years, those teeth wear down and those cups slowly disappear.
So it's basically a countdown timer built right into the jaw.
That's a great way to put it. Right, and it gets even more detailed than that. Around age 10, a dark vertical line called Galvain's groove appears near the gum line.
Wow.
Yeah, on the upper corner incisors. And it slowly grows downward as the horse gets older.
That's incredibly specific.
It is. An expert buyer in the 1800s could pry open a horse's mouth, look at the angle of the teeth, the presence of those cups and the length of that groove, and literally tell you the animal's age within a matter of months.
Which means the teeth are the truth.
Exactly.
But, wherever there is serious money on the line, there will always be an industry dedicated to manipulating the truth.
Oh, absolutely. Always.
So if a younger horse is worth a fortune and an older horse is headed for the glue factory, sellers are going to get creative, right?
They absolutely did.
Yeah.
Unscrupulous dealers developed a highly specialized, highly deceptive practice to artificially lower the apparent age of their horses.
And what was that called?
The historical term for this was bishoping.
Bishoping. The research notes mention that it was named after a notorious horse dealer named Bishop, who supposedly pioneered the technique.
That's the legend, yeah.
But how were they actually altering the biological record?
Well, it was essentially a brutal form of equine cosmetic surgery.
Yikes!
Yeah. Remember those cups? The indentations that prove a horse is young?
Right, the ones that wear away?
Exactly. When an older horse had worn its teeth completely flat, a dealer practicing bishoping would take a sharp file and carve fake depressions into the flat, biting surfaces of the older horse's teeth.
Oh, wow. They were forging the anatomy.
They were. And it gets worse, honestly. To make those carved depressions look like the natural, dark, stained cups of a young horse, they would take a hot iron or apply silver nitrate to burn a black spot into the freshly carved indentation.
That is wild.
They would also use rasps to file down the long, angled teeth of an older horse to make them look shorter and more upright, basically mimicking a younger jawline.
You know, reading about this bishoping process, it immediately reminded me of a shady used car salesman.
Oh, that's a perfect comparison.
Right. Like, think about buying a used car before the era of digital records, before Carfax or anything. The value of a car is entirely tied to its mileage. You want a car with 30,000 miles, not 130,000. So a dishonest mechanic would pull the dashboard apart, reach into the instrument cluster, and manually roll back the physical odometer to artificially inflate the sticker price.
That analogy holds up perfectly. The wear on a horse's teeth is literally its biological odometer.
And just like a smart car buyer wouldn't just take the salesman's word for the mileage they'd take the car to an independent mechanic to check the actual wear on the engine belts and the brake pads. A smart horse buyer in the 19th century knew better than to trust the dealer.
Exactly. They knew they had to look past the sales pitch.
Right. They had to bypass the middleman and look straight in the horse's mouth to see if the odometer had been rolled back.
And you see why the logic of that theory is just incredibly robust. It perfectly mirrors our modern understanding of the phrase. You are going to the only physical location where the verifiable truth resides.
So here is my big question then. If this theory is so logically airtight, if it relies on real historical practices like bishoping, and if it perfectly aligns with how we use the idiom today, why do the sources you sent us insist that this is totally wrong?
Because we have to step out of the veterinary stable entirely and into the archives of the printed word.
Okay, shifting gears.
Yeah. The downfall of the teeth theory doesn't come from a flaw in equestrian logic. It comes from the timeline of etymology.
Ah, so we are looking for the paper trail.
Exactly. For decades, the preeminent authority on the history of the English language, the Oxford English Dictionary, placed the very first known written use of straight from the horse's mouth in the year 1928.
1928. That feels surprisingly late for a phrase rooted in 19th century horse dealing.
It does. It was found in a novel by the famous British author P.G. Wodehouse. And, if 1928 was the true starting point, the bishoping theory still held a little water. Well, you could argue it was just a nostalgic phrase. By 1928, cars were replacing horses, the gritty reality of horse dealing was sort of fading away, and maybe this old auction yard survival tactic finally just drifted into mainstream literary prose as a metaphor for truth.
Right, that makes sense. But etymologists rarely let a definitive date sit unchallenged.
Never.
The notes highlight a researcher named Gary Martin who decided to dig into newly digitized newspaper archives, and he completely shattered that 1928 timeline.
You really did.
He pushed the origin of the phrase much, much further back.
Martin unearthed a quote from a London publication called the Reynolds newspaper. And the date on this printed page was not 1928, it was 1896.
Wow. A jump backward of over 30 years.
Yeah, and it fundamentally changes our understanding of the phrase. I want to read the exact quote from the 1896 Reynolds newspaper because the context here is what completely dismantles the dental theory.
Okay, let's hear it.
The journalist wrote, "As the great British nation takes far more interest in horse racing than in politics, we'd get all our tips straight from the horses' mouths instead of being deluded and swindled every day by their lordly owners."
Okay, wait, hold on. A jump from 1928 to 1896 is a great historical find, for sure. But how does one single newspaper, quote, completely invalidate the teeth theory?
I know it sounds like a stretch.
Like, couldn't the readers in 1896 just be talking about checking the horse's teeth before placing a bet? I mean, a gambler might want to know if the horse is too old to run.
That is a very fair assumption, but we really have to look closely at the language the journalist chose. Let's look at the syntax first and then the culture. Linguistically, what's fascinating here is that the writer deploys the phrase with absolute casualness.
Meaning they don't bother to define it for the reader?
Exactly. When a writer introduces a brand new idiom to the public, or when they drag a highly specialized piece of industry jargon like veterinary dental inspection into a general Sunday newspaper, they provide a buffer.
Oh, I see.
They might write, "As the old horse traders warn us," or they take a sentence to explain the metaphor. But this writer just tosses it into a sentence about politics.
The implication being that the readers of the Reynolds newspaper in 1896 were already intimately familiar with the phrase.
Right.
It was established shorthand.
He was already deeply embedded in the cultural lexicon of London. But to your question about why this invalidates the teeth theory, it's all about the cultural context of that specific newspaper and the world it's describing.
Okay.
The Reynolds newspaper wasn't a trade journal for horse breeders or livestock auctioneers. It was a mass-market, working-class publication. And the quote has nothing to do with prospective buyers trying to determine a horse's biological age or financial value.
Right, because it says, we get all our tips, it's about betting.
Exactly. The quote pulls us completely out of the auction yard and drops us directly into the chaotic, high-stakes atmosphere of the 19th century racetrack.
That completely changes the framing.
Totally changes it.
The phrase wasn't born from the careful, quiet inspection of a veterinarian looking for burned enamel. It was born in the middle of a gambling ring.
Yes. Let's put yourself in the shoes of a bettor back then.
Yeah.
The trackside culture of the 1890s was a massive cultural phenomenon, especially for the working class. But it was an absolute minefield of misinformation.
Oh, I bet.
There was no heavily regulated sports betting industry like we see today.
So you were relying entirely on whispers and rumor.
You are constantly being bombarded with unreliable betting tips. Everyone down at the track claimed to have a sure thing.
Right.
The stable hands, the trainers, the guys just loitering by the paddock, they were all peddling rumors that would dictate where gamblers placed their hard-earned money.
And the 1896 quote specifically complains about being deluded and swindled every day by their lordly owners. That points to a massive power imbalance.
Oh, the class tension is central to the origin of the phrase. The lordly owners, the wealthy aristocrats and syndicates who owned the racing horses, controlled the entire ecosystem.
Of course they did.
They knew the actual health and capability of the animals, and they were notorious for manipulating the betting odds.
How would they do that?
Well, an owner might purposefully leak a false rumor that its champion horse was feeling slightly lame that day, which would cause the odds to lengthen.
Ah. So the working class bettors would avoid betting on that horse.
Exactly.
Only for the owner to swoop in, bet on his own animal at fantastic odds, and then take home an absolute fortune when the horse miraculously ran a perfect race.
The owners were the ultimate corrupt middlemen. They were intentionally distorting the truth for financial gain. So if you are a frustrated punter standing by the track, sick of losing your wages because the aristocrats are lying to you and the trackside tipsters are just guessing,
you realize that every human source of information is compromised by greed.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean? You need a source that doesn't care about money. You need an insider who can't be bribed and who knows the exact physical condition of the animal better than the trainer, better than the jockey, and better than the lordly owner.
And who is the only entity in that entire ecosystem who actually knows how fast they're going to run that day.
The horse.
The ultimate insider.
Wow. So the implication of this 1896 quote is that the bettors were wishing for something mathematically, biologically impossible.
Okay.
They didn't want to check the horse's teeth. They wanted the horse to lean over the fence and whisper, "Put 10 shillings on me in the third race. My left ankle feels great today."
It is such a profound shift in how we understand the idiom. The teeth theory is grounded in this gritty, physical reality. It relies on the tangible wear and tear of calcium and enamel.
Right.
But the true trackside origin moves the phrase into the realm of pure, whimsical fantasy.
It's essentially a 19th century Mr. Ed joke.
That's exactly what it is. Long before television gave us a talking horse, the frustrated gamblers of Victorian London were using the concept of a chatting thoroughbred as the absolute benchmark for uncorrupted information.
That's so fun.
If the horse could talk, its betting tip would be the only piece of data completely free of human bias and manipulation.
It is so fascinating to see how an idea can be so powerful that it detaches entirely from its original joke.
Right.
I mean, those gamblers in the 1890s were making a very specific, sarcastic complaint about being swindled by rich owners. But the concept of finding that perfect, uncorrupted source resonated so deeply with human psychology that it bled right out of the racetrack and infiltrated every aspect of the English language.
We crave certainty. And the false theory, the idea of checking teeth, has survived for so long because it satisfies our desire for a physical, historical anchor.
It sounds plausible.
It sounds like a sophisticated piece of trivia. You can picture a shrewd buyer prying open a jaw to outsmart a swindler. It feels true.
But the reality is far more abstract and honestly a lot more revealing about how we process information.
Definitely.
When we use the phrase today to talk about office gossip or corporate news, we aren't thinking about Victorian gambling rings or talking animals. We just want the unvarnished truth.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture in your research notes, it shows that human nature hasn't fundamentally shifted since 1896.
Not at all.
Just think about your daily experience navigating the internet today. You, listening to this deep dive, are swimming in a modern equivalent of that trackside misinformation machine.
We are surrounded by our own versions of lordly owners.
Exactly. We have social media algorithms designed to feed us outrage rather than facts.
Right.
We have PR spin, politically biased news aggregators, sponsored content disguised as journalism.
It's exhausting.
Every single day, we are bombarded with information that has been filtered through someone else's financial or ideological agenda.
We are all just frustrated bettors standing by the track trying to figure out which tip is real and which one is a swindle.
The desire to bypass the middleman is universal. We just changed the venue from the dirt tracks of London to our digital news feeds. We are still desperately searching for that one source that doesn't have a vested interest in deceiving us.
Which brings a completely new layer of meaning to this entire deep dive.
I think so too.
We started by talking about the desire for a paper trail. The need for a forensic, verifiable truth that you can point to and trust implicitly. And it leaves me with one final, incredibly provocative thought for you to mull over as you navigate the news this week.
What stands out to you?
Think about the irony here. When our culture wants to describe the absolute, undisputed truth like the most solid, reliable fact imaginable, we lean on an idiom that derives entirely from a fantasy.
Yeah.
We demand the truth by referencing an imaginative, impossible scenario of a talking horse giving gambling tips.
Kind of wild when you put it like that.
What does it actually say about our desperate, exhausting search for perfect information that our culture's ultimate metaphor for absolute truth relies on a source that doesn't actually exist?
It definitely forces you to look at every single source a little more critically. The perfect informant might just be a complete myth.
Keep questioning everything you read, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.